Hello, welcome back to Thrive Yoga Fit Transformational Coaching. This is Erin. Hey everyone. So you'll notice that today's episode is a little bit different. My co-host Claire Miller and I had a special guest, Dr. Bradley Nelson. Unfortunately, during live recording, my computer, my Zoom just wasn't working. And we tried a bunch of things. We tried resetting. So what I wound up doing was removing myself from the interview so that the interview could actually take place, because ultimately this isn't about me. It's about sharing great information with you to heal. So this is continuing our Heal and Be Healthy series, The Journey with Dr. Bradley Nelson. Dr. Bradley Nelson is the author of the best-selling book, The Emotion Code, How to Release Your Trapped Emotions for Abundant Health, Love, and Happiness. His new book is The Body Code, Unlocking Your Body's Ability to Heal Itself. For more information and a free Emotion Code starter kit, visit emotioncodegift.com. Thank you so much. We hope that you enjoy this interview, and namaste.
Welcome, Dr. Nelson. We're so excited to have you today and in our podcast. We'd like to welcome you here and welcome those who are now joining us. Dr. Nelson, you have been on a great journey, one that I have followed since the beginning of the Emotion Code, but we'd like at the very beginning for you to start and tell us about your health journey and what it's evolved into.
Well, yes, thank you, first of all, for having me on. My journey really began when I was 7 years old. I was really sick with the measles, and I'd overheard my parents talking, and I knew the plan. The plan was I was going into the hospital the next day, and they were putting me into something called an oxygen tent. And I was just really, really sick, and I didn't know what that meant. But this particular night, everyone else had gone to bed. My parents had made a bed for me on the couch in the living room so I could be near their bedroom. And they came into the room, and my mother said to my father, she said, "Honey, will you kneel down and say a prayer with me so that our boy will be able to get well?" So they did. So I'm lying there really sick on the couch, and they kneel down by the side of the couch. My dad starts offering this prayer. And in the middle of this prayer, and it's not a long prayer, short, but in the middle of this change starts at the top of my head, and it goes through my body to the soles of my feet, and I'm instantly healed. Now, I held my tongue till my dad was done praying, which didn't take long. And when he was done, I said, I'm better. And they said, "That's fine, honey, go back to sleep." And the next day proved it to everybody that I was better. And so that was, one of my earliest memories, but that is a memory that is so burned into every particle of my being that it could have happened yesterday. I remember it like it happened yesterday. It's just because to go from being really, really sick one moment to being totally healthy in the next instant is something that you can't ever forget. And so I remember that. And I learned a couple of things from that. I learned that there's a higher power that we can draw upon, and an unseen power. And I learned that a prayer sure worked that time. So I learned that about prayer. I also learned that healing doesn't necessarily have to take a long time, because it happened instantly for me. I mean, within the space of a single second, my body transformed. So I know that that's possible because it happened to me. And so then I was a normal kid, had a great family, great parents, grew up in Great Falls, Montana. A lot of greats there in a row. But about 7 years later, I started getting these pains in my back that were kind of terrifying. They'd come out of the blue. I never knew when these were going to hit me. And bam, all of a sudden I'd be on the ground, or it would take my breath away. And my parents took me to the hospital, and they ran tests, and my parents were told they had kidney disease. And I learned later from my mother that they were told it was about 50% fatal. And there was nothing they could really do for me. And so there was nothing that Western medicine had to offer. So my kidneys were fighting for their lives. And if they died, I was dead, because, they didn't do kidney transplants back in those days. And so my parents took me to see some old time holistic doctors. Now, these were a couple of osteopathic doctors that, when the osteopathic profession was engulfed by Western medicine and they became like MDs so they could prescribe drugs and do surgeries, these two were very against that. And so they just stayed out and practiced out on the edge of town in a trailer house in the middle of a wheat field. And they had a couple of locations, but that was the location where I saw them. And I can remember pulling up to their house and seeing a busload of people drive away, and people would charter buses to come see them from other states because they were true healers. So they started working with me and started rearranging things in my spine and correcting things. And immediately my body started responding. I mean, I could feel it in my body that what they were doing was just what I needed. And so within about 3 weeks, I didn't have any more pain at all. And immediately they started becoming less frequent and less severe and so on. And so my parents took me back to the hospital. They ran the test. And as I recall, they ran the test twice and they said, well, it's a spontaneous remission. Whatever he did must have helped. And I knew that they hadn't really done anything. These other doctors had done what needed to be done, and they'd helped me. So I decided at that time, age 13, that's what I want to do with my life. I want to be a doctor like these guys. And if I need to practice out on the edge of town in a trailer house in a muddy wheat field, that's okay, because that's, to me, at age 13, that seemed to be the natural habitat of doctors that got results. And so I can remember lying on my back and looking up at them and saying, I want to do what you do when I grow up. And they would say, no, you don't. They'd say, if you go to chiropractic school or naturopathic school or some school of natural healing, they'll fill your head so full of fixed ideas that when you get out, you won't even be able to think for yourself. You'll be like a zombie. And so they were pretty discouraging about it. But I filed that away and I believed everything they told me. These people had saved my life. So I was going to BYU Hawaii in 1980. And I took a class just because I needed an extra class to fill out my schedule. I took a class on computer programming. It was the basic language, learning basic. And boy, I'll tell you, that was just this whole nother world, this whole other world for me that I just absolutely fell head over heels into, and loved computers, loved programming. My brothers, when I got back from Hawaii back to Montana, I went to work with my brothers. They had a manufacturing company. They were manufacturing miniature trampolines. Remember those when that was a big
yeah.
back in the early 80s?
Yes.
And so I started working with them, and I was the computer guy. And so and we bought a computer. We had a couple different computers there. And so that led to me really learning how computers worked and learning programming. And then I had a business. I hung up my shingle, called myself the computer tutor. And I'd go into people's businesses back in the early 80s, 83, 84, when people would buy a computer and didn't know what to do with it because there was no software. And I would write the software and enable them to kind of, make their business work with a computer. So that was really fun for me. And I thought, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. This is great. And then in the winter of 83, 84, I was actually going to BYU. And I was about 6 months away from going into the MBA program there to get my master's in business. And we went home to Montana. And we were sitting around the fire with my mom and dad, and we had one little girl at the time, got a total of 8 now. But we just had our first baby, and we were sitting there talking, and out of the blue, my father said to me, "Are you sure that you don't want to go to chiropractic school? It seems like a great career, and you've always wanted to do that." And I said, "No, I'm going this other direction. I'm going to get my MBA and go to work for some big company and do computer work." And he said, "Well, why don't you think about it one more time?" So I thought, all right. So Gene and I made up this pro and con list of going into the business world and going to work for some big company and getting my MBA, or getting going into the healing arts, going to chiropractic school and becoming a doctor. And the list was pretty long on both sides, and so it wasn't really convincing. So But having learned there's a higher power and I could ask for help and God would give me that help. That night, I got on my knees and I prayed and I said, Father in heaven, if this makes any difference to you, what I should do, help me to know here, because I'll go either way. I really felt like I was in the middle of a fence. I thought I had it all figured out. And now I'm kind of back to this point where this old dream of going into the healing arts had kind of been resurrected by my dad's question. So now I've got these two careers that both look really compelling. So I went to sleep that night and I was awakened 3 different times that night. And each time that I was awakened, the thoughts were, my mind was full of thoughts about how wonderful it is to be able to heal people naturally and help people naturally and serve people. And I would feel all those feelings and think all those thoughts. And then I would think, well, yeah, but the new IBM PC has a 4 megahertz processor, and I'd fall back asleep. So that happened 3 times that night. So the next day I'm still not convinced. And so that night I'm on my knees again, praying and asking God to help me. And that night I have the same experience, but with a twist, because on the second night I was awakened 3 different times. But each time, if you can imagine, these thoughts that are filling my mind when I wake up are like exponentially more powerful each time, until the third time that I was awakened on that second night, the thoughts of service to mankind and humanity and the whole world. I mean, it's just absolutely overwhelming. And right then I hear this voice that speaks to me, this crystal clear voice. And it says, "This is a sacred calling." And I thought, okay, I get it. I accept. And so I didn't really know what that meant. I had my answer, I felt. And so went to chiropractic school and it was fabulous. I had a great time, made a lot of great friends there, learned an awful lot, and it was really a great experience. But I can remember I was on guard because of what I'd been told by these healers that had helped me, that I'd come out of there like a zombie. And so no matter what anybody said, if any of my instructors or anybody else said, "Hey, this is the best way to do this," I would always think, well, maybe it is, maybe it's not, maybe there is a better way. I don't know. Maybe there's a better way. And so I just was open, kind of wide open. And I got a certain amount of ribbing from my classmates because of that, because I was just so radically open. But it was a really important thing. Now, being a computer programmer, I programmed my way through school. Actually, I wrote the admissions office software that the school was using, and so that was kind of interesting. It helped put me through school, and sometimes they'd come get me out of class, which was great. My classmates hated it, but if they had a bug or something, they'd come get me. I'd have to go in and fix it, and it was really fun. But I can remember sitting in class and listening to my neurology instructor in particular talk about the brain, how the brain is this amazing computer. And I remember sitting there thinking, well, it's a computer. Wow, I'm a computer programmer. It's a computer. Is there a back door? Will we ever be able to access the computer that is within each person? Because if we could, that computer brain, it must know what's really wrong with people. And if we could access that information, wow, that would be amazing. And those are my thoughts back in those days. Little did I know that that's what I was going to be dedicating my whole life to, really, was this understanding that within each one of us is this internal computer, call it the subconscious mind, the spirit, or whatever you want, that does know exactly what we need and knows exactly what's wrong with us. And if we ask, we can receive answers. And so it was critically important for me that I had become a computer programmer. That was a huge step. Steve Jobs talks about how you can't connect the dots looking forward in your life, but if you look back, you can connect the dots and see how you got to where you are. And so that was really important. And it turns out that the subconscious mind is a computer. The interface for that computer, if you think about your phone, the interface, you've got the little icons and you use your finger and you touch things and so on. The interface for your laptop is your keyboard, right? The interface for the subconscious mind can vary, but typically we teach people how to do different kinds of muscle testing, as you know very well, because the subconscious mind is connected to the physical body in such a way that if you ask a question of the subconscious computer system, and the answer is yes, the body will be strong, muscles will be strong. If the answer coming back from the subconscious mind is no, the muscles will be slightly weaker. And so you can ask questions, and then the subconscious mind, the physical body, has this binary interface, really. It's for purposes of getting answers, essentially, the subconscious mind is a binary computer because the answers are given back in the form of a yes or a no. So strong muscle or weak muscle. And the same thing with other things like if you want to use a dowsing device, like a pendulum or a bobber or something like that, anything like that, all of those work because dowsing devices are just manifesting the change that's taking place in the body, those energetic changes. So it's been a really interesting journey.
Absolutely. Fabulous. Fabulous. And it started with you after you got your chiropractic. Then you went on, and what was the inception of the emotion code? Because that's your seminal work.
Yeah, right. The emotion code book was published the same month and year, July 2007, as the iPhone, to kind of orient you. That's how long it's been around. And then we recently, in 2019, we republished the emotion code as a hardcover book. 2019, that's seeming to be longer than it used to be. And then just this year, in February of 2023, we published this new book, The Body Code. What happened to me was I was really obsessed with getting to the underlying causes of my patients' problems. And, initially when I was first in practice, cases were simpler and people would have physical pain and I would be able to help them. And I was learning everything that I could from everywhere that I possibly could. I was never really satisfied with attaining a certain level of knowledge. I was always trying to find more knowledge. I was always looking for better ways to do things. And prayer was a big part of that, actually. In fact, really the most powerful tools, I think, really came to me through prayer. And this is something that none of my patients knew during the roughly 2 decades that I was in practice. None of them knew that I was saying a prayer for them, but I was. So when a person would come in, I had developed this habit feeling like I need all the help that I can get. God, you got me into this, so maybe you can help me now. I need all the help I can get. And so when somebody would come in, before I would go to work on them, I would just take a moment and just ask for help from God for this person. And it was a private habit and it was personal and it was just a momentary pause, really. But there were times, Claire, when somebody would come in to see me and I didn't know how to approach their problem. I didn't know how to help them, didn't know what to do. And in response to this asking for help, information would just flood in like an avalanche of understanding. I mean, it was an amazing thing. That in all those years, that kind of experience only happened. I mean, I can count those times on one hand. The rest of the time, when we're asking for help, and you know this very well, those answers are usually subtle, right? They come in the form of a little thought, maybe, or an impression, right? Or maybe an idea that we have that we usually think is our own, right? Oh, I'm so smart. Look what I came up with. But oftentimes, those answers are coming from those angels that surround us, that are there to help us and give us answers. But sometimes it was dramatic, and not very often, but once in a while. And so as time went on, and I'm studying everything I can from every kind of healing art that's ever been in the world, I would say, pretty much. I was incorporating things that worked. I would try things and if they didn't work, then I would discard them. And I kept trying to refine things and kept trying to make things faster and simpler and easier. And it's like in the Body Code book, I talk about how if I can see further than other men, like Sir Isaac Newton said, if I can see further than other men, it's because I stand on the shoulders of giants. And that's true, absolutely, for me too. I mean, if I've been able to put anything together, it's because of all the work that other people have done. And so I'm grateful for all the people that have done such amazing work throughout the centuries and these last, 5,000 or 6,000 years of recorded history. And so, so as time went on, I found that I just had interesting experiences, that taught me about how the body works. I'll share a couple of those with you. One day, I used to do this method where I had a table that was vertical. It was a chiropractic table. People would stand up against the table. They put their nose in the slot, and then I'd press a button and the table would go down horizontal and this foot plate would drop away. So I could actually measure the length of their legs. And I learned this method of working with the body using an activator, a little plunger gun. You've maybe seen those before, right? So I was doing that method for a number of years. And then I had this experience one day. Well, first of all, I found, and it was taught somewhat in that method too, that if a bone was out of alignment, if you pushed it further into misalignment, the body didn't like that, and the leg length would change and one leg would go short. And so what I was doing is patients would come in, I would check their leg length, they'd usually be off, and then I'd work on them until their legs were balanced. And that's kind of how I did it. Well, one day this guy comes in and it's at the end of his treatment. I've got him all totally balanced. His legs are perfectly matched. And for some reason that I don't remember, I just was thinking about his left kidney, which is an odd thing, right? But chiropractors will understand. I'm thinking about his left kidney, and I come back to his feet, and his leg length now is way different. One foot is way off. And I just thought, wait a minute, I just got this guy balanced. What's going on? So I thought about his right kidney, came back and checked his leg length, and they were perfectly aligned. And I thought, what? And I thought about his left kidney, boom, big change in his leg length, right? And I did this a number of times. So I realized from that, there's something going on with this guy's left kidney. But when I think about it, there's some kind of a connection here between what I'm thinking about and his computer system, right? Is reading what I'm thinking somehow. That was crazy. Well, so then it got to a point where I would just ask questions and get answers from the leg length, right? And so this is a process that went on. I mean, I was working with patients day in and day out, month after month, year after year, right? So this went on for a long time, but I was gradually learning things bit by bit. And I found that one of the really important things that I could do to help people get out of pain was to check the balance, basically, of the organs and the glands of their body. What I found, and I didn't discover this, but this is work that other people had done, that there are connections between the organs and the glands and the muscles of the body. And so when a person would come in to see me with left knee pain, I could pretty safely assume that there was an imbalance in that person's left adrenal gland because of the muscles that connect with the left adrenal gland, the calf muscles and some other muscles that cross the left knee joint. So I found that if I corrected that gland, it would turn those muscles back on, and 9 times out of 10, the pain would be gone, right? Because because things are connected. I found that if a person came in, they had right knee pain, that was 99% of the time, it was a gallbladder imbalance. And so if I went to the gallbladder and corrected the imbalance going on there, the knee pain would suddenly just instantly be gone most of the time. And things like that. So I was learning all of this. And when people would come in with pain between the shoulder blades, I found it was usually an imbalance in the liver. And so what I found was that I could correct these imbalances in these organs and glands, and sometimes they would stay, sometimes they would hold, and sometimes they wouldn't. So then the next piece of the puzzle was really the emotional piece. And when I first got into practice, when I first got out of school, I went to work for a guy named Dr. Stan Flagg up in Kalispell, Montana. And I followed him around with a notebook for about 4 months and just made notes for him. And he was an amazing healer and learned some interesting things from him. And one of the things that I learned was about this emotional, it was kind of a primitive method of emotional healing. And they called emotional erase. And it had to do with the governing meridian right here. And you would kind of rub up and down to try to release things. And he didn't use it very much, but I thought it was kind of interesting. And then as time went on, there were some things that I just was temporarily exposed to that I picked up on. And I realized there's more to this emotional thing than people realize. So I started playing with this in my practice and experimenting. And what I was able to put together, of course, is what we now call the body code, or sorry, the emotion code. The body code is the emotion code is included in the body code, but that was the first thing, and it was really amazing because what I found was that 90% of all of the pain that people had was because of their emotional baggage. And as time went on, I learned how to find emotional baggage that was inherited. And I learned how to find emotional baggage that people would bring to conception with them from their life before, right? And it was really an astonishing thing. And it was an enormous piece of the puzzle, because now I found that if an organ or a gland was imbalanced and I couldn't keep it balanced, it was almost always because of emotional baggage. And if I cleared the emotional baggage, if I cleared that trapped emotional energy, I could get those organs and glands to stay balanced now, on a pretty much a permanent basis. So that was huge, especially for people that were in pain. Well, because I was a computer programmer and because I knew how to do mind mapping, when the first mind mapping program came out for the IBM PC, I bought one. And so I always had a computer there with me in my office. And as I'm working on people and as I'm finding new things through study or practice or prayer, I would record those things. And what I was finding was that all of my patients had something in common, no matter how young or old they were, no matter what they were suffering from. And what that was something that I came to call imbalances. And an imbalance can be a lot of different things. It could be a pathogen that's in the body that's not supposed to be there. We talk about all of these 6 categories that I came up with of imbalances. They're all in the body code. So for example, if we look at the body code map, and what I'm doing here is I'm holding up a map. For those of you that are just on audio, there are 6 icons here, 6 pictures. And each one of these 6 pictures represents a different kind of imbalance that we suffer from as human beings. One of those is pathogens. In other words, if you get some kind of a pathogen like a virus or bacteria or a fungus or mold going on in your body, a parasite, you're not going to be as healthy as you could be. Got to get rid of that. That makes sense. Another icon represents what we call energies. And those are things like trapped emotions. For the most part, these are things that are in the body that shouldn't be in the body. Trapped emotions, physical trauma, types of energy, different things like that. Sometimes offensive energies and mental energies and so on. Another icon is what we call circuits and systems. And that has to do with the circuitry of the body and the systems of the body, the acupuncture systems, the chakras, and so on. And here's an example of how, to give you an idea how all of this came about. Here's a great example. We have a daughter, my wife and I, who is 23. I guess she's 23 now, right? 23. Anyway, she just had a birthday. Anyway, so when my wife was pregnant with her years ago, she was really sick with morning sickness and was begging me to help her. And I was thinking about all the things that I had done in the past to help with morning sickness that had never worked, right? None of those things had ever really helped very much my other patients. And those were things like wearing the acupressure wristband, or eating ginger, things like that. None of those things really help. They might take the edge off a little bit. None of them really fixed it. So my wife is asking me to help her. And so I thought, well, none of these things really work. And so I said a prayer and I said, Father in heaven, if there is a better way to deal with this, please help me to understand it, because I don't really have anything that's worked very well in the past. I don't know of any way to help her really. And in the name of Jesus Christ, amen. As a Christian. And boom, all of a sudden I get this answer that flows in, and it's almost whimsical. And the answer is, well, you'd feel pretty sick too if you had this new life growing inside of you, especially if your brain wasn't connected to it. And that was the answer. And I thought, so it's a connection problem? I mean, who would have ever thought of that? And so what I did is I started testing her using muscle testing, asking questions. And I found that there were some disconnections between her brain and we defined 4 parts of that new life, the fetus, the umbilical, the amniotic fluid, and the placenta. And all of those have to be connected to the brain. And the brain has to be connected to those. It's a full duplex communication, you'd call it, because the communication has to go both ways. And so I was able to make those connections again with her just through intention. I would just find a disconnection through muscle testing, and then just swipe a few times down the middle of her back with a magnet to remake that connection. And when I got all the connections made, all of a sudden, she goes from having the back of her throat watering, like she's going to throw up any second, to all of a sudden it's gone. And it lasted for a couple of days, and then it started to come back again, and I had to remake another connection. And then I think she had one last connection I had to redo one more time a couple of days later. And then that was it. And I thought, wow, this is really amazing. And of course, I got really excited about it. I thought, this is the cure for morning sickness. It's a huge issue. So I took out a big ad in the paper, Claire, and we were doing this study on morning sickness, and only one woman showed up. And I was able to help her, but I guess the other ones were too sick to get out of their house. But anyway, we have practitioners now that just specialize in this, in fixing this, we call it morning sickness. In other countries, they call it the sickness of pregnancy, nausea of pregnancy. So that was really interesting, right? I never in my wildest dreams would have imagined something like that, but that came from prayer. And so then that started leading to other answers, and started leading to understandings about disconnections between the spirit and the physical body. Because I used to wonder about this, how does the brain, how does the body connect with the spirit? What is the connection? Well, we don't know. We know that when people die, studies have shown, or one particular study from back in about 1915 showed that when you die, you lose about 21 grams of weight, right? Is that the weight of the spirit leaving the body? I like to think that it is. But while the spirit and the physical body are together, combined, how do they communicate? What's the interface like? Well, we don't know. I mean, it's the science of God, right? But what I did find is that interface can break down in some ways. And that's all in the body code, how you can find those kinds of disconnections and correct those. And so, yeah, I mean, there's just so much, we could probably talk for a long time, but anyway.
We could, but I have a burning question.
Yeah.
So what if our listeners say, this sounds great, I want to know more. How can do they go pick up the book and read it and do it? Or do you have like trainings or something like that people could learn more about this?
Yeah, we have, if you go to our website at discoverhealing.com, we have a 14-day emotion code challenge that you can sign up for, where we walk you through the emotion code. If you're brand new to this, we walk you through over 14 days. We send you a video every day and teach you how to do the emotion code. And because our goal is we want everybody all over the world doing this, because everybody needs it. Everybody's got emotional baggage. And just doing that, you'll see amazing things happen, no doubt. Now, we also have certification programs for people. Our level 1 certification is the emotion code. And we start you there because you only have to worry about finding and correcting one kind of imbalance, and that's just emotional baggage, just trapped emotions. And then we have a level 2 certification for the body code, where it gets more involved, and it's all really simple, but it's a totally different way of looking at the body and helping the body. And it's really very exciting. And then we're later on this year, we're going to be introducing our 3rd level of certification, which will be called the belief code. And that's going to be about finding and removing those negative belief systems that we all get that interfere with us. And so yeah, the programs are all done online. They're 6 months. You get 6 months. You have a hard deadline at 6 months. Most people do these programs in about half the time. The record, I think, was 9 days. We had someone that did emotion code and body code certifications in 9 days.
Wow.
And then that gives you the right to hang out a shingle and charge people if you want to. We find that now about 30% of the people that are signing up for our certification programs really don't have an intention of setting up their own practice. They just want to really learn this material, and that's fine. You can do that too. So, and then if you're looking for someone, if you don't want to learn it yourself, that's okay too. We've got practitioners. We've certified over 10,000 practitioners, Claire, now in the emotion code, in 80 plus countries around the world. And so you can find somebody that can work with you. We've also got thousands of people certified in the body code. We have a map. If you go to discoverhealing.com, there's a global practitioner map, and you can look at that map. And because this work is energy work and it's based on quantum physics, you don't have to be in the same room with that person. You might find that the best person to work with you that you really like the most, maybe they're in Singapore or the UK or something, or Dubai. So you can find them on that map.
Fabulous. Well, you have certainly let your light shine. That is, wow, that's so exciting. And I'm so happy
amazing
for you.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for sharing your journey. I would just like to say in conclusion, it has changed my life. I used the emotion code when it first came out, and it helped me so much personally.
Awesome.
Big hug to you. Thank you so much. And I use it in my practice. With my clients a great deal, and it has every time it has benefited my clients that I've worked with. So thank you.
Well, you're so welcome, and I accept your gratitude, and then I pass it right up to the creator of everything, because that's really where this has come from.
Absolutely.
God always has a better idea of how to do things than we do. And
isn't that the truth? It
makes
is.
sense, right?
So thank you for being with us today. Thank you for your time.
Thanks,
and
Claire.
for sharing your heart with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
God bless you. We'll
You
see you
too.
later.
Thanks.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you so much for listening. If you want to support the podcast and if it's helping you, please consider writing a review. You can go to iTunes or Google Play, go into the search bar and type in Thrive Yoga Fit Transformational Coaching, scroll down, and you can leave a review. This helps other people to find me as well as bumps us up in the search ratings. Also, this podcast is sponsor-free, so that means we don't receive anything for doing it. If you feel so inclined and this podcast is helping to support you and you want to return the favor and help to support any production costs of the podcast, feel free to give a donation to a Venmo link, Thrive Yoga Fit, or PayPal, Aaron@aaroncoach.com. If you don't have the means, don't worry about it. We're not going anywhere. You're all good. But if you would like to give back, you can give back in those ways. Thank you so much. Namaste.